The stagecoach lurched violently as it rounded the bend, throwing Catherine Moreau against the wooden bench. Through the dust-caked window, she caught her first glimpse of Redemption Creek, a collection of weathered buildings clinging to existence in the shadow of the Montana mountains. Her ribs ached beneath the corset that had once fit perfectly, back when she'd eaten regularly, back when she'd been the prima ballerina of the San Francisco Opera House. Before everything shattered like glass beneath a careless boot. The letter crinkled in her pocket, its words memorized through countless readings. Your presence is required immediately. The estate must be settled. Her father's ranch, left to her after his death 3 months prior. A ranch she'd never seen, inherited from a man she barely remembered. Her mother had taken her east when Catherine was 6, chasing culture and refinement, leaving the wild frontier behind. Now, at 24, broke and running from debts she couldn't pay, and a theater owner who'd made his intentions horrifyingly clear, Catherine had nowhere else to go. Before we continue, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments. The stage deposited her in front of the general store just as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rust. Catherine stepped down, her worn traveling dress gathering dust, her ballet slippers, the only shoes she owned, utterly impractical for the unpaved streets. The driver tossed her single carpet bag down without ceremony and departed in a cloud of dust, leaving her standing alone as curious eyes tracked her from every doorway and window. "You lost, miss?" A heavy-set man with a star pinned to his vest approached, his expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. "I'm looking for the Moreau Ranch," Catherine said, lifting her chin despite her exhaustion. "I'm Catherine Moreau. I inherited it from my father, Thomas." The sheriff's expression shifted to something like pity. "That property's been in dispute, miss. Clay Bridgers had his eye on it for years, claims your father owed him money. Been working that land since Thomas passed. Says he's got first right to buy it." Catherine's stomach dropped. "I have the deed. The lawyer sent it." "Lawyers and deeds are one thing. Out here, possession counts for plenty." He gestured vaguely north. "Bridger's got men working that ranch right now. You might want to talk to him before you go making claims." She found the Bridger Ranch 2 miles outside town, her feet bleeding inside her ballet slippers by the time she reached the gate. The property sprawled across a valley, cattle dotting the grassland like dark stones scattered across green felt. The main house sat elevated on a slight rise, a solid structure of timber and stone that spoke of wealth and permanence. Catherine approached the barn, where the sound of hammer on metal rang out in steady rhythm. She stepped into the dim interior, her eyes adjusting to find a man working at an anvil, his back to her. He was shirtless, his skin bronzed and gleaming with sweat, muscles moving beneath the surface like living architecture as he shaped a horseshoe with practiced precision. Dark hair fell past his collar, and even from behind, she could sense the coiled power in his frame. "Mr. Bridger?" Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. He turned, and Catherine forgot to breathe. He stood well over 6 feet, his chest broad and heavily muscled, his abdomen carved into distinct ridges. His face was angular, almost harsh, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. But it was his eyes that held her, deep brown, almost black, beneath heavy brows, eyes that assessed her with unsettling intensity. "That depends on who's asking." His voice was low, rough as gravel. "Catherine Moreau, I've come about my father's ranch." Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He set down his hammer and reached for a shirt hanging on a post, pulling it on without buttoning it. "Thomas's daughter. Heard you were coming. Then you know I've inherited the property. The sheriff suggested you believe you have some claim to it." Clay moved closer, and Catherine had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. He smelled of smoke and leather, and something indefinably masculine that made her pulse quicken despite her wariness. "Your father and I had an agreement. He owed me $3,000, gambling debts. I've been working the land, improving the stock, with the understanding I'd purchase it when he passed. $3,000. It might as well have been $3 million. I have the legal deed. The property is mine. Can you run a cattle ranch, Miss Moreau?" He crossed his arms, the muscles in his forearms flexing. "Can you break horses, mend fences, handle a branding iron? Can you shoot straight enough to put down a sick cow or defend against rustlers?" Heat rose to her cheeks. "I can learn. Winter's coming in 2 months. You'll be snowed in by November, cut off from town until spring thaw. You got money for supplies? For hands to help work the place?" His eyes traveled over her, taking in her impractical dress, her ruined shoes. "You look half-starved already." Catherine's hand moved instinctively to her pocket, where her mother's ring rested, the last valuable thing she owned. She'd sold everything else to pay for the journey west. "I have resources. Show me." She hesitated, then pulled out the ring. It had been her grandmother's, a delicate gold band with a small ruby. In San Francisco, a jeweler had offered her $40 for it. "I can trade this for supplies for—" Clay's hand shot out, closing over hers, enveloping both her fingers and the ring in his large, calloused palm. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm. "Put that away. Gold isn't what you need here." "Then what do I need?" The question came out more desperate than she'd intended. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Come with me." He led her across the property to a smaller house set back from the main residence, a modest structure with a covered porch and flower boxes beneath the windows. Inside, it was furnished simply but comfortably. A stone fireplace, worn furniture, shelves lined with books, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee and bread. "This was my wife's house," Clay said, his voice careful. "Sarah. She died 2 years ago, complications from influenza. I haven't been able to—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "You can stay here, work for your keep, cooking, mending, whatever you can do. In exchange, I'll teach you what you need to know about ranching. When spring comes, we'll settle the question of the property properly." Catherine turned to face him, searching his expression for the trap, the hidden price. "Why would you do this?" "Because I knew your father. He was a good man who made bad choices, but he didn't deserve to have his daughter starving on the street." Clay moved to the door, then paused, "And because Sarah would have wanted me to help. She always said a woman alone needs protecting, not exploiting." "I don't need protecting," Catherine said, lifting her chin despite the trembling in her hands. "I need opportunity." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Then we'll start tomorrow at dawn. Get some rest, Miss Moreau. Life out here is harder than any stage you've danced on." He left, and Catherine sank onto the sofa, her body finally admitting its exhaustion. Through the window, she watched him walk back toward the main house, his stride confident and unhurried. She should feel relief, gratitude. Instead, she felt something more complicated, a mixture of wariness and inexplicable attraction that terrified her more than starvation ever had. That night, that's what her mother had whispered with her dying breath, her own body broken by Catherine's stepfather's fists. Trust no man, and you'll survive. But dawn came regardless of her fears. Clay arrived as the sun broke over the mountains, carrying a bundle of clothes. You can't work in that dress. These were Sarah's. They'll be big on you, but better than ruining what you've got. The trousers and work shirt hung loose on Catherine's frame, but she cinched them with a belt and felt, for the first time in months, like she could breathe fully. Clay led her to the barn, where a gray mare waited in the corral. First lesson? Horses. Can you ride? I took lessons as a child. Side saddle. Clay's mouth twitched, almost a smile. We don't ride side saddle out here, Miss Moreau. You ride like you mean it, or you don't ride at all. He demonstrated mounting, his movements fluid and practiced, then dismounted and gestured for her to try. Catherine approached the mare, her heart hammering. The animal was enormous up close, its dark eyes watching her with what seemed like amusement. Her name's Dove. She's gentle, won't throw you unless you do something truly stupid. Clay moved behind Catherine, his hands settling on her waist to boost her up. The contact, even through layers of clothing, sent heat rushing through her body. Left foot in the stirrup. Swing your right leg over. She managed it awkwardly, clutching the saddle horn as the ground suddenly seemed very far away. Clay adjusted the stirrups, his hands brushing her ankles, then stepped back to observe. How does it feel? Terrifying, Catherine admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Now heels down, back straight. You've got dancer's posture. Use it. They spent the morning in the corral, Clay teaching her the basics of control, how to guide the horse with subtle pressure from her legs, how to read Dove's body language. He was patient but demanding, correcting her grip on the reins, the position of her shoulders. Once, when she slouched from fatigue, his hand pressed between her shoulder blades, straightening her spine. Pain is your body telling you something's wrong, he said. Listen to it, but don't let it control you. By noon, Catherine's thighs screamed with unused muscles, and her hands were raw despite the gloves Clay had provided. He helped her dismount, steadying her when her legs threatened to buckle. Enough for today. You'll be sore tomorrow, but it gets easier. I'm fine, she insisted, though she had to grip the fence rail for support. Clay studied her, his expression thoughtful. You've got grit, I'll give you that. Most society women would have quit after an hour. I'm not most society women. The words came out sharper than intended, carrying all the bitterness of her fall from grace. And I'm not fragile. I danced 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. I know how to push through pain. That so? He moved closer, and Catherine found herself backed against the fence, his large frame blocking out the sun. He wasn't threatening exactly, but he was overwhelming, tall and broad and utterly male. Then tell me, Miss Moreau, what happened to make a prima ballerina end up here, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a ring she was ready to sell? Catherine's throat tightened. That's not your concern. It is if you're living on my property. I don't like surprises, and I don't like being lied to. His voice remained level, but there was steel beneath it. Someone hurt you. I can see it in the way you flinch when I move too fast. The way you watch the road like you're expecting someone to follow. She wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she felt tears burning behind her eyes, tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed through weeks of running and fear. He said I owed him. The theater owner. He said I owed him for the costumes, the training, the opportunities. When I couldn't pay, he decided there were other ways I could settle the debt. Clay's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the stubble. Did he? No, I ran before he could. But he would have. Catherine wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the afternoon heat. My mother taught me that men take what they want and call it their right. That women are currency, not people. Your mother was wrong. Clay's voice was quiet, fierce. Some men are bastards who deserve to be shot. But some of us remember that women are people, partners, equals. Sarah taught me that, if I didn't know it before. Catherine looked up, meeting his eyes. You loved her. More than breathing. She was tough as nails and gentle as morning light all at once. When she died, I thought I'd die too. He turned away, staring at the mountains. I made her a promise, though. Told her I'd keep living, keep this ranch going, help people when I could. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not a charity case. Didn't say you were. You're a woman who got dealt a bad hand and is trying to play it best she can. That takes strength. He looked back at her. You want to prove yourself? Tomorrow we ride out to check the fence line. It's a full day's work. Hard riding. You up for it? Yes. No hesitation this time. Then get yourself some food and rest. Dawn comes early. The pattern established itself over the following weeks. Catherine rose before sunrise, working alongside Clay and his two ranch hands. Jorge, a quiet Mexican man who'd worked for Thomas Moreau, and Samuel, a former cavalry soldier who'd settled in Montana after the war. They taught her to mend fences, to recognize signs of disease in cattle, to read weather in the shape of clouds and the behavior of animals. The work was brutal. Her hands, once soft and carefully maintained for their expressive beauty in dance, became calloused and scarred. Her body, trained for grace and flexibility, learned new strength, the power to drive a fence post, to control a horse, to heft saddles and hay bales. She fell into bed each night too exhausted for fear, too tired for the nightmares that had plagued her in San Francisco. And slowly, grudgingly, she began to feel something like peace. Clay was an enigma. He pushed her hard, but never beyond her limits, seemed to instinctively know when she needed encouragement versus when she needed space to figure things out herself. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it transformed his harsh features into something approaching warmth. He never touched her unnecessarily, maintaining a careful distance that should have felt safe, but instead left her oddly disappointed. One evening, 3 weeks into her stay, Catherine prepared dinner in her small kitchen. Beef stew with vegetables from the garden. Bread she'd learned to bake from Jorge's wife, Maria. On impulse, she carried a bowl to the main house, knocking on Clay's door as the sun set in brilliant orange and purple across the western sky. He answered in shirt sleeves, his hair damp from washing. Miss Moreau, I made extra. Thought you might be hungry. She held out the bowl, suddenly feeling foolish. Unless you've already eaten. Haven't. He took the bowl, stepped back. You want to come in? The house was masculine, but not stark. Comfortable furniture. Shelves of books, photographs on the mantel showing a smiling blonde woman with kind eyes. Sarah. Catherine studied the images while Clay ate, seeing the way he'd looked at his wife in the photographs, the easy affection in their body language. She was beautiful, Catherine said softly. She was everything. Clay set down the empty bowl. Met her when she came west as a schoolteacher. Thought she was crazy, leaving civilization for this rough country. But she loved it. Loved the space, the challenge of building something from nothing. We had 5 good years together. Not enough, but more than some people ever get. You must miss her terribly. Every day. But grief's not something you get over, Miss Moreau. It's something you learn to carry. Sarah wouldn't want me buried alongside her, not while I'm still breathing. He moved to the fireplace, staring at the flames. She'd like you, I think. Would admire your determination. I'm not determined. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Is there? He turned to face her. You could have stayed in San Francisco, found some man to marry you, given up your independence for security. Instead, you risked everything to come here, to fight for property you'd never seen. That's not desperation. That's courage. Catherine felt her eyes burning. I'm terrified all the time. Every noise at night, every stranger in town, I think he's found me. That he's come to... She stopped, unable to finish. Clay crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. Listen to me. You're safe here. I promise you that. Any man who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first, and I don't go down easy. Why? The question burst from her. Why do you care what happens to me? You don't know me. I'm just some woman who showed up claiming property you want. Because you remind me that there's still good worth protecting in this world, Clay said quietly. Because Sarah would have wanted me to help. And because... He stopped, jaw tightening. Because when I look at you, I see someone who's been broken and is trying to put herself back together. I know what that's like. The air between them felt charged, electric. Catherine found herself swaying toward him, drawn by something she didn't understand and wasn't sure she wanted. Clay. He stepped back, breaking the spell. It's getting late. You should head back. The dismissal stung more than it should have. Catherine nodded, moving toward the door. As she reached for the handle, his voice stopped her. Catherine. Her first name, spoken in his rough baritone. You're doing good work. Don't think I haven't noticed. She looked back to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Thank you. For everything. Nothing to thank me for. This is what neighbors do. But they both knew it was more than that. October arrived with cold winds and the first threat of snow. Clay decided Catherine was ready for a longer ride, checking on the herd grazing in the high pasture. They set out at dawn, riding through terrain that grew increasingly rugged as they climbed. Catherine had developed into a capable rider, her dancer's balance translating well to horseback. Clay watched her with quiet approval as she guided Dove over rocky ground, adjusting her weight instinctively. They reached the high meadow by mid-morning, where several hundred head of cattle grazed among the golden grass. Clay dismounted, scanning the herd with practiced eyes, counting, looking for signs of illness or injury. Catherine joined him, and he began pointing out what to look for. The healthy shine of a cow's coat, the alert posture that indicated wellness. You've got a good eye, he said after she correctly identified a cow that seemed listless. That one might be coming down with something. We'll separate her when we drive them down for winter. They ate lunch sitting on a flat boulder, sharing jerky and canteen water, while the horses grazed nearby. Below them, the valley spread out in shades of green and gold, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance. The wind carried the scent of pine and sage. It's beautiful, Catherine said softly. I never imagined anything like this existed. Sarah used to say Montana was God's country. I didn't really understand what she meant until after she died. Now I think she was right. There's something about this land that either breaks you or makes you whole. He glanced at her. Which is it doing to you? I don't know yet. Ask me when winter's over. They began the descent as the afternoon wore on, following a different route that Clay said was faster. The trail wound along a ridgeline, narrow and steep, requiring careful attention. Catherine was focused on the path when Dove suddenly shied, dancing sideways. Catherine grabbed for the saddle horn, keeping her seat through instinct and practice. Easy, Clay's voice was sharp. Don't fight her. But it was too late. Dove reared, and Catherine, off balance, felt herself sliding backward. She hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Pain exploded in her shoulder, and then she was rolling, tumbling down the steep slope, rocks and brush tearing at her clothes and skin. She stopped against a fallen log, gasping, the world spinning. Through blurred vision, she saw Clay dismounting with terrifying speed, scrambling down the slope toward her. He reached her in seconds, his hands running over her body, checking for broken bones with practiced efficiency. Don't move. Tell me where it hurts. Everywhere, Catherine managed. Her shoulder felt like it was on fire, and her ribs ached with each breath. Blood ran down her cheek from a cut near her temple. Can you move your fingers? Toes? When she did, he nodded. Good. Nothing's broken, but you're bruised to hell. I need to get you back to the house. He stripped off his jacket, wrapping it around her shoulders. This is going to hurt. He lifted her as though she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest as he carried her up the slope. Each step jarred her injured shoulder, making her gasp. She found herself pressing her face against his neck, trying to breathe through the pain, inhaling his scent, leather and pine, and something uniquely him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have controlled her better. Rattlesnake spooked her. Not your fault. His arms tightened around her. You're okay, I've got you. The ride back was slow agony. Clay set her on his horse, mounted behind her so she could lean back against his chest, his arms on either side as he controlled the reins. The intimate position would have scandalized her a month ago. Now, she was grateful for the support, for the solid warmth of his body keeping her upright when her own strength failed. At the house, he carried her inside, laying her on the bed with surprising gentleness. I'm going to need to check your injuries properly. That means removing your shirt. Catherine's pulse quickened, but she nodded. Clay worked efficiently, his touch clinical as he helped her out of the torn, bloody garment. She was left in her chemise, and she saw his jaw tighten as he took in the full extent of the damage. Bruises blooming across her ribs and shoulder, scrapes covering her arms, the cut on her temple still bleeding sluggishly. He fetched water and clean cloth, settling beside her on the bed to clean the wounds. His hands were gentle, almost reverent, as he wiped away blood and dirt. When she hissed at a particularly deep scrape, he paused. Go slow, Catherine whispered. It hurts. I'll die before I hurt you, Clay said, the words fierce and low. I promise you that, Catherine. I'll die before I hurt you. Their eyes met, and something shifted, a wall crumbling, a door opening. Clay's hand came up, cupping her cheek with infinite care. His thumb brushed her unmarked skin, and Catherine found herself leaning into the touch, starved for gentleness, for the simple comfort of human contact that asked nothing in return. I want to kiss you, Clay said, his voice rough, but you're hurt, and I don't want to take advantage. Then don't take. Catherine reached up, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, threading her fingers into his hair. Let me give. She pulled him down, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that started tentative, searching, and quickly deepened into something desperate and hungry. Clay made a sound low in his throat, his arms sliding around her waist to pull her closer, careful of her injuries. His mouth moved against hers with a skill that made her dizzy, his tongue seeking entrance that she granted willingly. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clay pressed his forehead to hers. That was either the best or worst decision we could have made. Why worst? Because now I know what you taste like, and I'm going to spend every moment wanting more. He pulled back, his expression conflicted. You're vulnerable right now. Hurt. I don't want you to think I expect anything. Stop. Catherine placed her hand over his heart, feeling it hammering beneath her palm. I'm not fragile. I'm not some helpless girl who doesn't know her own mind. I've been running from men who wanted to take from me, use me. You're the first man who's offered to give, who's treated me like I'm worth something beyond what I can provide. She met his eyes. I want this. I want you, but I need to know you won't hurt me. Promise you won't hurt me. The question emerged barely above a whisper, her voice breaking on the last word. Clay's hand came up, cradling her face like she was something precious. I can't promise you'll never hurt again. Life out here is hard, and loss comes for everyone eventually. But I can promise I'll never be the one to break you. I'll protect you, stand beside you, teach you everything I know. And if the day comes when you want to leave, to go back to dancing or find somewhere less wild, I'll let you go without complaint. His thumb brushed her lips. You're not property, Catherine. You're a person, a strong, fierce woman who survived things that would have broken weaker souls. I see you, all of you, and I'm in awe. Catherine felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm so tired of being afraid. Then let me help carry it. Clay kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. We'll face it together. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. The word resonated in Catherine's chest. Together. Not her alone against the world, but partnered, supported. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Clay finished tending her wounds, then helped her into a clean nightgown Maria had brought from the main house. He insisted on staying the night, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, despite her protests. Catherine woke several times to find him watching over her, his presence a comfort against the darkness and pain. In the morning, she hurt everywhere, but it was a good hurt, the kind that came from survival, from testing linnets and discovering she was stronger than she'd believed. Clay helped her sit up, brought her breakfast, hovered like a concerned mother hen, until she laughed despite her bruises. I'm not dying. You can stop fussing. You could have died yesterday. When I saw you fall. He stopped, jaw working. Don't ask me to joke about it. Not yet. Clay. She caught his hand, threading their fingers together. I'm here. I'm okay. He raised their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Stay that way. For me. Recovery took a week. Catherine chafed at the forced rest, but Clay was immovable. She would heal properly or answer to him. It gave her time to think, to examine the feelings growing between them. She'd thought herself incapable of trusting a man again, had believed her mother's warnings were carved into her soul. But Clay was patient, gentle, respectful in ways she hadn't known men could be. He brought her books from his collection, sat reading aloud when her headaches made focusing difficult. He taught her chess in the evenings, his competitive nature emerging in ways that made her laugh. He told her stories about Sarah, about their life together, not hiding from the past, but not letting it poison the present either. "Do you think she'd mind?" Catherine asked one evening. "About us, I mean." No, Clay didn't hesitate. Sarah believed life was for living, that love wasn't finite. She'd want me to be happy, to find connection again. And she'd like you, your strength, your determination. She'd say you're good for me, keep me from turning into a bitter old hermit. Are you happy? With me here? He looked at her, his eyes serious. Happier than I've been in 2 years. Terrified too, because I'm remembering what it's like to care about someone, to have something to lose again. But yes, Catherine, you make me happy. She reached for him, pulling him down beside her on the sofa. Then kiss me again. Make me feel alive. This time, the kiss was slower, deeper, an exploration rather than a desperate claiming. Clay's hands roamed her body with increasing confidence, learning the curves and hollows, the places that made her gasp. Catherine arched into his touch, her own hands sliding beneath his shirt to trace the hard muscles of his back. Catherine. Her name was a groan against her lips. If we keep going, I won't want to stop. Then don't stop. She looked up at him, seeing the hunger in his eyes, matched by the restraint. I trust you. Teach me what it's like when it's supposed to be. Not tonight. Not when you're still healing. Clay kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. When I make love to you, and I will, Catherine, make no mistake about that. You're going to be whole and strong enough to give as good as you get. I want you fierce and demanding, not fragile. The promise in his words sent heat pooling low in her belly. You're a tease, Clay Bridger. And you're a temptation. Catherine Moreau. But good things are worth waiting for. The waiting was its own kind of torture and pleasure. As Catherine healed and returned to work, the tension between them built like a storm gathering on the horizon. Every casual touch felt charged. Every lingering glance spoke volumes. They danced around each other, the attraction building until the air practically crackled when they were in the same room. Jorge and Samuel noticed, exchanging knowing looks and the occasional teasing comment that made Catherine blush and Clay scowl. But beneath the teasing was approval. These men who'd known Clay through his grief saw the life returning to him, and they were glad. It was Maria who finally confronted Catherine, catching her alone in the garden one afternoon. You are good for him. This thing between you. We're just, I don't know what we are. You are falling in love, both of you. Anyone with eyes can see it. Maria smiled, her weathered face kind. Don't fight it, Mia. Life is too short and too hard to refuse happiness when it finds you. But what about the ranch, the property dispute? Once that's settled, then you will both figure out what comes next, together. Maria patted her hand. Clay is a good man. He will not trap you or force you. He will give you choice, and that is the greatest gift a man can offer a woman. Catherine carried those words with her as November approached, bringing with it the first serious snow and the reality that soon they would be cut off from town until spring. Clay increased the pace of work, stockpiling supplies, moving the herd to lower pastures where they could be more easily tended through the winter months. One night, as they worked late in the barn repairing tack by lamplight, Catherine finally voiced the question that had been growing in her mind. What happens in the spring when we have to settle the property ownership? Clay's hands stilled on the leather he was mending. That depends on what you want. I want to stay. I want to make this work. The ranch, learning this life. She paused. But I also want you, and I don't know how to have both. Why can't you have both? Clay set aside his work, moving to stand before her. Catherine, I've been trying to figure out how to say this, how to ask without putting pressure on you. But I'm not a man who's good with fancy words, so I'll just speak plain. He took her hands in his grip warm and steady. Marry me. Not as a business arrangement, not to settle property disputes. Marry me because I love you, because I want to build a life with you, because the thought of you leaving come spring makes me want to put my fist through a wall. Catherine's heart hammered. You love me? From the moment you stood in my barn, looking scared and stubborn in equal measure. You've got fire in you, Catherine, a strength that calls to something in me. Sarah will always have a piece of my heart. First love leaves its mark, but there's room for you too, for what we could build together. He cupped her face. I'm asking you to be my partner, my equal, not my property or my burden. We'll work this ranch together, make decisions together. Your dreams matter as much as mine. I don't know what my dreams are anymore. Dancing was everything, and then it was taken from me. I thought I'd lost myself, lost any purpose beyond survival. Catherine pressed her hand over his heart. But being here, with you, I'm discovering new dreams, of a life built on honest work, of partnership, of maybe someday having a family, of being strong enough to stand on my own, but choosing to stand beside you instead. Is that a yes? That's a yes. She pulled him down into a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility. I'll marry you, Clay Bridger. I'll build this life with you, learn and grow and face whatever comes. Together, the kiss deepened. Years of loneliness and months of building tension finally finding release. Clay's hands slid into her hair, angling her head for better access, his tongue sweeping into her mouth with devastating skill. Catherine pressed closer, her body fitting against his like puzzle pieces finally aligning. Not here, Clay growled against her lips. You deserve better than a barn floor for your first time. He swept her into his arms, carrying her through the snow to his house, kicking the door shut behind them. Inside, the fire he'd built earlier cast dancing shadows across the room. Clay set her on her feet before the hearth, his hands gentle as he began unlacing her shirt. Tell me if you want to stop. Any time, for any reason, and we stop. You understand? Catherine nodded, too overwhelmed with sensation to speak. Clay undressed her slowly, reverently, pressing kisses to each newly revealed inch of skin. When she stood before him in only her chemise, his eyes darkened with hunger that made her shiver. Your turn, she whispered, reaching for the buttons of his shirt. Clay stood still, letting her explore, watching her face as she pushed the fabric from his shoulders and traced the hard planes of his chest and abdomen. Scars marked his skin, badges of a life lived hard and survived. Catherine kissed them, one by one, feeling the tremor that ran through his powerful frame at her tenderness. Catherine. Her name was almost a prayer. She looked up, finding his eyes burning with intensity. Show me. Teach me how it's supposed to be. Clay lifted her, carrying her to his bed. Their bed now, she realized with a thrill. He laid her down on the quilts, covering her body with his, the weight of him grounding and thrilling at once. His lips found hers again, his kisses growing more demanding as his hands roamed, learning, exploring, driving her wild with sensation. Catherine yielded to him completely, giving trust she'd never thought she could give again. And Clay broke every rule she'd learned about men. He was gentle but passionate, demanding but giving, powerful but restrained. He coaxed responses from her body she hadn't known she was capable of, building her pleasure with patient skill until she shattered in his arms, crying out his name. Afterward, he held her close, her head resting on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I love you," he murmured into her hair, "my fierce, beautiful ballerina." "I love you too." Catherine traced patterns on his skin, marveling at the rightness of it, at how something she'd feared could become something beautiful when offered with respect and tenderness. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, for being patient, for showing me that not all men are monsters." Clay tightened his arms around her. "Thank you for taking a chance on a broken-down rancher with too much grief and too little poetry in his soul. You're not broken. You're healing. We both are." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "And we'll keep healing together." Winter descended in earnest, blanketing Montana in snow and ice, but inside their home, for it was truly theirs now, warmth prevailed. Clay taught Catherine the 1,000 small tasks of maintaining a ranch through winter. Tending animals, maintaining equipment, planning for spring. She taught him to laugh again, to find joy in simple things, to look forward rather than constantly backward. They married in December, a simple ceremony in the Redemption Creek Church, with Maria and Jorge and Samuel as witnesses. Catherine wore a dress Maria had sewn from Sarah's fabric, not hiding from the past, but honoring it, acknowledging that love could bloom again without diminishing what came before. Clay slipped a gold band on her finger, his hands steady, his voice strong as he spoke vows of partnership and devotion. That night in their bed, he whispered against her skin, "You're mine now, and I'm yours. No going back. I don't want to go back, only forward." Catherine tangled her fingers in his hair, pulling him close. "Build this life with me, Clay. Make it real." And they did. Through the long winter, through spring thaw and summer heat, through seasons and years, they built something real and lasting. Catherine never returned to dancing professionally, though sometimes, on summer evenings, Clay would find her in the meadow, moving through ballet positions with grace that still took his breath away. She'd smile and pull him into an awkward waltz, teaching him steps he'd never master, but would attempt anyway because it made her laugh. The property dispute was settled amicably. Clay bought out his claim to Thomas's land, while Catherine retained ownership, the deed eventually listing both their names as equal partners. They expanded the operation, combining their holdings into one of the most successful ranches in the territory. Catherine proved to have a head for business, managing accounts and negotiating contracts with skill that surprised even her. Children came, 3 in all, and Catherine discovered she was as fierce in motherhood as she'd been in reclaiming her life. She taught her daughters to ride and shoot, to stand tall and speak strong. She taught her son that strength was about character, not domination, about protection, not possession. Clay aged into a silver-haired giant, still powerful in his 70s, still treating Catherine with the same reverence he'd shown that first day in the barn. On quiet evenings, they'd sit on their porch and watch the sunset over mountains that had witnessed their journey from broken strangers to partners to legends in their own small corner of the world. "Any regrets?" Clay would ask sometimes. "Not a one." Catherine would lean against him, fitting perfectly under his arm, even after decades. "You gave me a life I didn't know I could have." We gave each other that, together, and there it was, the word that had defined them from the start. Together, they'd healed. Together, they'd built. Together, they'd created something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of what they'd lost. The ballerina and the cowboy, the prima donna and the rancher, the broken woman and the grieving man. They'd found each other in the wild frontier and forged a love story for the ages. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Not because they were perfect, but because they were willing to try, to fail, to pick each other up and keep going. That's what legends are made of. Not flawless heroes, but flawed people choosing each other, day after day, year after year, choosing partnership over loneliness, courage over fear, love over protection, choosing together over apart. The spring thaw brought more than melting snow. It brought trouble riding a black stallion. Catherine was hanging laundry when she saw the rider approaching, his silhouette dark against the afternoon sun. Something about the way he sat his horse made her stomach clench with recognition even before she could make out his features. She dropped the sheet she'd been pinning, her hands trembling as they hadn't in months. Clay emerged from the barn, his posture changing the moment he saw her face. "Catherine, what's wrong?" "He found me." The words came out barely above a whisper. "That's Marcus Webb, the theater owner from San Francisco." Clay's expression went cold. "Dangerous. Get in the house." "Clay!" "Now, Catherine, trust me." His voice was steel wrapped in velvet, and Catherine recognized the tone that made even his toughest ranch hands obey without question. She hurried inside, watching through the window as Clay positioned himself between the house and the approaching rider. Marcus Webb dismounted with theatrical flourish, his expensive suit and polished boots ridiculously out of place against the rough frontier backdrop. He was handsome in a refined way, golden-haired, blue-eyed, with features that belonged on a painted portrait. But Catherine knew the cruelty those pretty features could hold, the violence those manicured hands were capable of. "I'm looking for Catherine Moreau," Webb announced, his cultured voice carrying across the yard. "I was told in town she might be here. Miss Moreau isn't receiving visitors." Clay crossed his arms, his massive frame radiating menace. "You can leave the way you came." Webb's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm afraid I must insist. Catherine owes me a considerable debt, nearly $5,000 in training costs, costume expenses, and lost revenue from her sudden departure. I've come to collect." "She doesn't owe you a goddamn thing. The law might disagree. I have contracts, receipts, documentation of every penny invested in making her a star." Webb pulled papers from his jacket. "Unless she's prepared to settle the debt, I'll be forced to pursue legal action. Or perhaps we could come to another arrangement." His smile turned predatory. "Catherine was always remarkably talented. I'm sure we could work something out." Clay moved faster than a man his size should be able to, closing the distance and grabbing Webb by the front of his expensive coat, lifting him onto his toes. "Listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. Catherine is my wife. She's under my protection, which means you so much as look at her wrong, and I'll bury you so deep in Montana soil, they'll never find the bones." Webb struggled, his composure cracking. "You can't threaten me. I have legal standing. This is Montana, not San Francisco. Out here, a man who preys on vulnerable women tends to have accidents. Fall off a cliff, get trampled by cattle, disappear into the wilderness, and never come back." Clay's voice was conversational, almost pleasant, which made the threat all the more chilling. Now I'm going to give you one chance. You ride out of here, go back to California, and forget Catherine Moreau ever existed. Or I can make sure you never threaten another woman again. Your choice. I'm not afraid of you, cowboy. But Webb's voice shook, betraying his words. Clay smiled, cold and utterly without humor. You should be. He released Webb with a shove that sent the man stumbling backward. Webb regained his balance, straightening his coat with shaking hands, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. This isn't over. I'll get the law involved. Sheriff McCready's an old friend of mine, and Judge Harrison, his daughter is married to my ranch hand's son. You want to try your fancy papers against frontier justice? Go ahead. See how far you get. Clay took a step forward, and Webb took 2 steps back. But know this. You pursue Catherine, you come back here. You so much as write her a letter, and I will hunt you down. I don't make threats, Mr. Webb. I make promises. Webb's eyes darted past Clay to the house, where Catherine stood visible in the window. For a moment, pure hatred twisted his features. Then he mounted his horse, yanking cruelly on the reins. She wasn't worth this much trouble anyway. Used goods, really, after... He didn't finish the sentence. Clay had his rifle out and aimed faster than Webb could blink, the sound of the hammer cocking loud in the sudden silence. Ride. Now. Webb rode, his horse kicking up dirt as he spurred it into a gallop. Clay stood watching until the man disappeared over the rise, then lowered his rifle and turned to find Catherine standing on the porch, her face pale. It's over, Clay said, climbing the steps to pull her into his arms. He's gone. What if he comes back? What if he really does get the law involved? Catherine was shaking. All the fear she'd been holding at bay for months, finally breaking free. I don't have $5,000. I don't have any way to prove those contracts were coerced. Breathe. Clay tilted her face up, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I meant what I said. He's not getting near you again. And if he tries to pursue this legally, we'll fight it. Together. I'm so sorry. I brought this to your door. You brought yourself to my door. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Clay kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. You're mine to protect now, Catherine. That's not a burden. That's a privilege. Inside, they sat by the fire while Catherine told him everything. The full story of her time in San Francisco. The way Webb had systematically isolated her from other performers, created debt she couldn't repay, made her dependent on his approval. The night he'd cornered her in the theater, after everyone else had left. The things he'd said he'd do if she didn't show proper gratitude. I broke a vase over his head and ran, Catherine said, her voice hollow with memory. Grabbed what I could carry and left everything else. I didn't even say goodbye to the other dancers. I just ran. You survived. Clay pulled her closer, his arms solid around her shoulders. You got out before he could really hurt you. That takes incredible strength. I don't feel strong. I feel like a coward. Catherine, look at me. When she did, his eyes were fierce with conviction. You recognized danger and removed yourself from it. That's not cowardice. That's survival instinct. Then you traveled across the country alone, claimed property in hostile territory, learned to work a ranch from scratch, and built a new life. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. She leaned against him, breathing in his familiar scent, letting his certainty shore up her crumbling composure. What if he really does come back? Then I'll keep my promise. Clay's voice was matter-of-fact. I've killed men before, Catherine. In the war, defending this property, protecting what's mine. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. Sometimes violence is the only language cruel men understand. Catherine should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction, a primal gratitude for his willingness to protect her at any cost. I love you. I love you too, and I'm going to talk to Sheriff McCready tomorrow. Make sure he knows the situation. If Webb shows his face in Redemption Creek again, he'll find himself in a cell for threatening a landowner's wife. Clay pressed a kiss to her hair. We'll also send a telegram to a lawyer friend of mine in Denver. Get legal advice about those contracts. Fight this on every front. But the next morning brought new complications. Clay rode to town with Samuel, leaving Jorge to watch over Catherine and the ranch. They returned late afternoon, both men grim-faced. Webb's still in town, Clay said, his jaw tight with anger. Staying at the hotel, talking to anyone who'll listen about his stolen property. He's being careful not to directly threaten anything, but he's poisoning the well, spreading rumors. What kind of rumors? Clay exchanged a glance with Samuel. That you're a thief and a lady of negotiable virtue. That you seduced him, stole money from his theater, and ran when he discovered your crimes. That he's here as a respectable businessman seeking legal restitution. Catherine felt her face flush hot, then cold. And people believe him? Some do, some don't, but it's putting doubt in folks' minds, making them wonder. Samuel spoke carefully, his weathered face sympathetic. He's a smooth talker, that one. Knows how to present himself as the wronged party. Sheriff McCready's on our side, Clay continued. But he can't run Webb out of town just for talking. And Judge Harrison's out of territory for another month, presiding over trials in Helena. Until he gets back, we're in a legal gray area. Catherine stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. So what do we do? Wait for him to destroy my reputation, to turn the whole town against us? No. Clay's voice was hard. We fight back with truth. Tomorrow, we're going into town. You're going to face him, face the town, and tell your story. Let people see you, not the rumors, but you, the woman who works this ranch, who rides and shoots and isn't afraid of hard work. The woman I married because she's strong and brave and good. Clay, I can't. You can. He crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. You faced him once already by running. Now you face him by standing your ground. Show him, show everyone that you're not a victim anymore. You're a rancher's wife, a landowner, a woman with power and position. He can't hurt you here. Catherine wanted to believe him, but that night, lying in bed while Clay slept beside her, she found herself staring at the ceiling, fear gnawing at her gut. Webb had always had power over her, the power of opportunity, of reputation, of access to the stage that had been her whole world. Even now, hundreds of miles from San Francisco, she could feel that power like a weight on her chest. But she'd also changed. She wasn't the desperate, half-starved dancer who'd arrived in Montana 6 months ago. She'd learned to ride, to shoot, to work until her hands bled, and then work some more. She'd learned that she could survive without the stage, without applause, without the approval of men like Marcus Webb. She'd learned she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Morning came cold and clear. Catherine dressed carefully, in her best dress, the one Maria had made from Sarah's fabric, a simple but elegant design in deep blue that brought out her eyes. She pinned her hair up, looked at herself in the mirror, and saw not a prima ballerina, but a rancher's wife, someone who belonged here, who'd earned her place through sweat and courage and sheer stubborn will. Clay came up behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "You ready?" "No, but I'm going anyway." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "That's my girl." They rode to town together, Clay on Ranger, Catherine on Dove. The main street of Redemption Creek was busy with morning traffic, wagons bringing supplies, women shopping, men conducting business. Heads turned as they passed, whispers following in their wake. Catherine kept her head high, her posture straight, dancers' discipline serving her well, even off the stage. Webb was holding court outside the hotel. A small crowd gathered around him. He saw them approaching and his expression shifted. Surprise, then calculation, then a smile that made Catherine's skin crawl. "Catherine, how wonderful to see you again." His voice carried, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "I'm so glad you've decided to face your obligations like a responsible adult." Clay dismounted, then helped Catherine down, his hand lingering at her waist in a gesture of support and possession. "Mr. Webb, still here, I see. I have business to conclude." Webb gestured to his audience. "I was just explaining to these good people about the unfortunate situation, how I invested thousands of dollars in Catherine's training and career, only to have her disappear with money from my safe. But I'm willing to be reasonable. If she returns what she stole and works off her remaining debt, I won't press criminal charges." The crowd murmured, eyes cutting between Webb's polished presentation and Catherine's rigid posture. Sheriff McCready pushed through, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Webb. You got proof of this theft?" "I have inventory records showing cash missing from my office the same night Catherine disappeared. I have her employment contract showing she owed me 3 years of service in exchange for her training. I never signed that contract," Catherine said, her voice clear despite the trembling in her hands. "You gave it to me after I'd already been dancing for 2 years, said I had to sign or you'd fire me and blacklist me from every theater in California. That's coercion, not a legal agreement." Webb's smile didn't falter. "You seem to remember signing it, though. And the courts will be interested to know. You left town the same night $200 went missing from my safe." "I didn't take any money." Catherine stepped forward, Clay a solid presence at her back. "I left with the clothes on my back and one ring that belonged to my grandmother. I left because you cornered me in the theater, told me my debts would be forgiven if I entertained you privately. When I refused, you said you'd make sure I never worked again, that you'd have me arrested for theft of costumes and props." She looked at the crowd, at the curious, judgmental faces. "I ran because I was terrified, because I'd seen what happened to other dancers who refused your advances. Suddenly, they found themselves owing money for torn costumes, missed rehearsals, imaginary damages. You're a predator, Mr. Webb, and I'm not your victim anymore." The crowd's murmur shifted, doubt creeping into the hostile stares. Webb's expression darkened. "That's slander. I could sue you for defamation." "Please do." Catherine's voice was steady now, growing stronger. "Because I'd love to see you explain in court why you kept contracts that specified dancers couldn't marry without your permission, couldn't leave the city without your approval, couldn't even visit family without written consent. I'd love to see you explain why you charged us for costumes that were company property, why you docked our pay for invented infractions, why there was always some reason we owed you money, no matter how many performances we did. I ran a business, Webb said, but his smooth facade was cracking. I provided opportunities. You ran a trap. Maria's voice cut through the crowd. She pushed forward, her weathered face fierce. I know this kind of man. In my village, we had one. Always the pretty words, always the contracts that meant you worked until you died and never earned enough to be free. My husband's sister, she worked for a man like you. When she tried to leave, he said she owed him money, had her arrested. She died in that jail. Maria spit at Webb's feet. Men like you are poison. Other voices joined hers. Women who'd heard similar stories. Men who'd seen predatory employers before. The tide was turning, and Webb felt it. His face flushed red, his composure finally breaking. This is ridiculous. I came here seeking legal restitution, and I'm being accused of... He whirled on Sheriff McCready. Are you going to allow this mob to slander me? I have rights. So does Mrs. Bridger. McCready's voice was mild, but there was steel beneath it. And I'm mighty curious about these contracts you mentioned. See, out here we believe a person owns their own labor, can't be forced to work against their will. Sounds like maybe you are operating something closer to indentured servitude, which is illegal in Montana territory. That's not. I was running a theater, not a... Sounds like you were running a scheme, another voice called. Old Tom Henderson, who ran the feed store, stepped forward. My daughter wanted to be an actress when she was young. Went to San Francisco. Came back 6 months later, half-starved and owing money she couldn't explain. Wouldn't talk about what happened, but she never sang again. He looked at Webb with disgust. How many girls you done this to? Webb looked around at the hostile faces, realizing he'd miscalculated badly. In San Francisco, his wealth and position had insulated him. His respectable facade had protected him. Here, he was just another outsider making accusations against one of their own. Because Catherine was theirs now, had earned that belonging through months of hard work and honest dealing. This is absurd, Webb said, backing toward his horse. I came here to settle a business matter. Then let's settle it. Clay's voice cut through the noise, silencing the crowd. You claim Catherine owes you money for training and breach of contract. I'll buy out that debt right now. $5,000, cash. You take it, sign a document releasing all claims against her, and you ride out of Montana. Or you refuse, and we let Judge Harrison sort it out when he returns. But if you choose the legal route, you better believe I'll hire the best lawyers in the territory to dig into your business practices. We'll find every girl you've exploited, every contract you've forced, every illegal thing you've done, and we'll make sure every newspaper from here to San Francisco knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Webb's mouth opened and closed. $5,000 was a fortune, more than enough to start over elsewhere. But accepting it meant admitting defeat, meant letting Catherine win. 10,000, he said, greed overcoming pride. She's cost me more than that in lost revenue. 5,000, and you thank whatever God you pray to that I'm offering anything at all. Clay's expression was granite. Take it or leave it, but decide now. Webb looked at Catherine, his eyes full of impotent rage. She met his stare steadily, refusing to flinch, refusing to show fear. After months of running, of hiding, of being terrified he'd find her. She was done. She was standing her ground, surrounded by people who'd chosen to believe her, protected by a man who'd promised to die before he'd let her be hurt. She was safe. Finally. Truly safe. Fine, Webb spat. 5,000. But I want it in writing that this settles all debts, all claims. I never want to hear from her again. The feeling's mutual, Catherine said quietly. 2 hours later, the papers were signed, the money transferred from the bank. Webb left Redemption Creek riding hard, his expensive suit dusty, his pride in tatters. Catherine watched him go, feeling something heavy lift from her chest. Not just relief, but vindication. She'd faced him, spoken truth, and won. That night, back at the ranch, Clay found her standing in the meadow where wildflowers grew thick in the spring grass. She was moving through ballet positions, her body remembering steps she hadn't practiced in months, her arms flowing through port de bras with unconscious grace. He watched in silence, not wanting to interrupt, seeing her fully for perhaps the first time. Not as the frightened woman who'd arrived on his doorstep, not as the determined student learning to ride and shoot, but as herself. All her pieces integrated. The dancer, the survivor, the rancher's wife, the fierce woman who'd faced down her abuser and emerged victorious. Catherine completed a pirouette and found him watching. She smiled, breathless and beautiful in the fading light. I thought I'd lost this. The joy of moving just for the sake of moving. But it was here all along, waiting for me to be ready to find it again. Clay closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm learning to believe it. She tilted her face up for his kiss. Thank you, for the money, for believing me, for standing with me. That's what marriage is, standing together when storms come. He pressed his forehead to hers. I'm proud of you, Catherine. The way you spoke today, the courage it took. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Clay brushed a strand of hair from her face. You did that today. You reclaimed your story. Your dignity, your power. That's worth more than any amount of money. Catherine felt tears burning behind her eyes, but they were good tears, cathartic, cleansing. I feel like I can finally breathe, like a weight I've been carrying for years just lifted. Then let's celebrate properly. Clay scooped her into his arms, making her laugh in surprise. I'm taking my brave, beautiful wife home, and I'm going to spend all night showing her exactly how much I admire her courage. That sounds perfect. Catherine wrapped her arms around his neck, her heart full to bursting. Take me home, Clay. Take me home. And he did, carrying her across the meadow as the sun set in brilliant orange and gold, painting their future in colors of promise and hope. Summer arrived in a blaze of heat and growth. The ranch thrived under Clay and Catherine's joint management, cattle healthy and multiplying, the land producing better than it had in years. Catherine had taken over the books and correspondence, her educated mind finding patterns and efficiencies that increased their profits significantly. Clay joked that marrying her was the best business decision he'd ever made, which always earned him a swat and a kiss. But as July melted into August, Catherine noticed changes in herself that she couldn't quite explain. Fatigue that no amount of sleep seemed to cure. Nausea that struck randomly, especially in the mornings. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Her weathered face gentle. And the sickness in the mornings, the tiredness, the way certain smells make you ill. Understanding crashed over Catherine like a wave. Oh, oh no, I can't. We haven't. It's too soon. Babies come on their own schedule, not ours. Maria pulled her into a hug. This is good news, yes? You and Clay, you will make beautiful children. Catherine's mind was racing. She'd never seriously considered motherhood, had assumed dance would be her life's work, her legacy. The idea of a child, a real, living human dependent on her, was terrifying. I don't know how to be a mother. My own mother, she did her best, but she was so broken, so afraid. What if I'm like her? What if I can't? You are not your mother. You are strong, brave, full of love. Maria held her at arm's length, her eyes fierce. You will be a wonderful mother because you know what children need. Safety, love, someone who sees them as precious. You will give these things because you know how it feels not to have them. Catherine pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, trying to imagine a life growing inside her. Fear warred with something else, a cautious, fragile hope. I should tell Clay. Yes, he will be, Maria smiled. He will be very happy, I think. But telling Clay proved more difficult than Catherine expected. Every time she tried to broach the subject, the words stuck in her throat. What if he wasn't ready? What if the reminder of family, of children, brought back too much grief about Sarah, about the family they'd never had? 3 days of false starts later, Clay cornered her in the barn. All right, enough. What's wrong? You've been acting strange all week, and don't tell me it's nothing. I know you better than that. Catherine took a deep breath, her hands twisting in her apron. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Clay stared at her, his expression unreadable, and Catherine felt her heart sink. She'd been right. It was too soon, too much. Then Clay let out a whoop that probably scared every horse in the barn, swept her into his arms, and spun her in a circle despite her protests. We're having a baby? Catherine, we're having a baby. Put me down, you madman. You'll make me dizzy. He set her down, but immediately cupped her face, his eyes bright with unshed tears. A baby. Our baby. Catherine, this is, I didn't dare hope. He kissed her, deep and thorough, pouring joy and wonder into the contact. When he pulled back, he was grinning like a fool. How long have you known? A few days. I was afraid. I thought maybe it was too soon, that you might not be ready. Not ready? Catherine, I've been ready since the day I married you. I just didn't want to pressure you. Didn't want you to feel like children were an expectation. He pressed his hand gently to her stomach. There's really someone in there? Someone we made together? Apparently. Catherine covered his hand with hers. Are you sure you're happy about this? It's going to change everything. Everything worth having changes us. Clay pulled her close, resting his chin on her head. I'm terrified and thrilled in equal measure. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful for you, for this life, for the chance to be a father. I never thought I'd get that again. Again? Clay was quiet for a moment. Sarah was pregnant when she got sick. Only 2 months along. We were going to wait to tell people, wanted to be sure. But the fever, she lost the baby before she lost herself. I've carried that grief along with losing her, the might-have-beens. Catherine's heart ached for him, for the compound loss he'd endured. I'm sorry, I didn't know. No one did, except Doc Patterson. We kept it between us. He pulled back to look at her. But this isn't about Sarah, not really. This is about us, about our future. And I'm choosing to be happy, to hope, to believe that this baby will be healthy and strong like their mother. Or big and stubborn like their father. That too, Clay grinned. Either way, they're going to be amazing. How could they not be with you as their mother? The pregnancy progressed well despite Catherine's worries. Doc Patterson confirmed it, gave her instructions for care, and pronounced her healthy and strong. "You're built like pioneer stock," he said with approval. "Should have an easy time of it, relatively speaking." Catherine wasn't sure about that, but she threw herself into preparation. Maria taught her to sew baby clothes, to prepare the tiny garments that seemed impossibly small. Clay converted one of the spare rooms into a nursery, building a cradle by hand, carving horses and mountains into the wood. Samuel and Jorge brought gifts: a tiny pair of boots, a soft blanket, a rattle made from smooth stones and leather. But as Catherine's belly grew, so did her fears. Late at night, when Clay slept beside her, she'd lie awake with one hand on her swollen stomach, feeling the baby move inside her, and wonder if she was strong enough for this, brave enough to bring a child into a world that could be cruel and hard. "What if I'm a terrible mother?" she whispered to Maria one afternoon as they worked in the kitchen. "What if I don't know how to love properly? How to raise a child who's confident and happy?" Maria set down her knife, her expression serious. "Mija, every mother worries about these things. It means you care, that you want to do well. But here is what I know. You are strong, you are kind, you protect what is precious to you. That baby inside you, they are already so loved. You will make mistakes, all mothers do. But you will also give that child something precious. A mother who fought for her own life, who claimed her own power. You will teach them to be strong. But what if the world is too hard? What if I can't protect them from everything?" "You cannot. No mother can." Maria took Catherine's hands in her weathered ones. "But you can teach them how to face hard things, how to survive and grow, and find joy even in difficulty. This you know how to do. You have already done it yourself." Catherine wanted to believe her. As the due date approached, late February, according to Doc Patterson's calculations, she tried to prepare herself mentally and emotionally. Clay had become almost comically protective, refusing to let her lift anything heavy, hovering whenever she rode Dove, insisting she rest more than she wanted. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," Catherine protested after he'd forbidden her from helping with the branding. "You're carrying my child. I'm allowed to be protective." Clay softened his tone, pulling her close. "I can't lose you, Catherine. You or the baby. I won't survive losing another wife, another child. So humor me, please. Let me fuss." She understood then that his protectiveness wasn't about controlling her, but about the terror of loss, the scars from Sarah's death that would never fully heal. So she let him fuss, let him wrap her in blankets and bring her tea and insist on helping her with her boots when her belly got too big to reach her feet easily. Winter came early that year, snow falling in November and not letting up. By January, they were truly snowed in, the ranch isolated from town by drifts that reached the horses' bellies. Catherine found herself grateful for Clay's preparation. The root cellar was full, they had plenty of firewood, and the cattle were sheltered in the lower pastures where they could access feed. The baby's movements became stronger, more insistent. Catherine would sit by the fire with Clay's hand on her belly, feeling their child kick and roll. "They're going to be a fighter," Clay said with pride. "Feel that? That's a strong kick. They're going to break my ribs if they keep that up." But Catherine smiled, her fear slowly being replaced by anticipation. This was real. She was going to be a mother, was going to hold her child in her arms and see what combination of her and Clay had been created. The contractions started on a bitter February morning, a week earlier than Doc Patterson had predicted. Catherine woke to pain radiating through her belly and back, breath catching in her throat. Beside her, Clay stirred immediately, always attuned to her even in sleep. "Catherine, what's wrong?" "The baby. I think it's time." Another contraction hit, stronger than the first, and she gripped Clay's hand hard enough to hurt. He was out of bed instantly, pulling on clothes with shaking hands. Okay, it's okay. I'll get Maria, Doc Patterson." "Doc Patterson is in town. We're snowed in, remember?" Catherine tried to keep her voice calm, despite the fear clawing at her chest. "It's just us and Maria." Clay's face went white. "I can try to ride to town, There's no time, and you die in this weather." Another contraction, harder, longer. Catherine breathed through it the way Maria had taught her. "Clay, I need you here, with me, please." He knelt beside the bed, taking her hand in both of his. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We'll do this together." Maria arrived within minutes, alerted by Jorge, who'd heard Clay's frantic shouts. She took one look at Catherine and nodded with satisfaction. "Good. The baby comes on a cold day. This means they will be strong. Now we prepare." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Maria directed Clay to boil water, to bring clean linens, to help Catherine walk when the contractions allowed. Between pains, Catherine paced the room, leaning on Clay's strength, trying to remember that women had been doing this since the beginning of time. But as the contractions intensified, fear threatened to overwhelm her. "I can't do this. Maria, I can't." "You can. You are already doing it." Maria's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Trust yourself." "Listen to me." Clay cupped Catherine's face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are the strongest person I know. You survived things that would have broken anyone else. You can survive this, and I'm right here. I'm not leaving you. Whatever you need, however long this takes, I'm here." Catherine clung to him, to his certainty, to the solid reality of his presence. Hours blurred together, pain and rest, effort and exhaustion. Maria's calm instructions and Clay's steady support. The world narrowed to this room, this moment, this battle her body was fighting. Finally, as dawn broke pale and cold through the window, Maria said the words Catherine had been desperate to hear. "The baby is coming. Now you push." The effort was monumental, consuming every ounce of strength Catherine possessed. Clay held her hand, murmuring encouragement, praise, love. And then, after what felt like an eternity, a new sound filled the room. A baby's first cry, strong and indignant. "A girl!" Maria laughed, her weathered face bright with joy. "You have a daughter!" Catherine collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face as Maria placed the tiny, squirming bundle on her chest. The baby was perfect, impossibly small, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be brown like Clay's. She was screaming her displeasure at the cold world, her tiny fists waving. "Hello," Catherine whispered, wonder overwhelming fear. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." The baby quieted at her voice, eyes trying to focus on Catherine's face, and in that moment, Catherine felt something shift inside her. A fierce, protective love unlike anything she'd experienced before. This was her daughter, hers and Clay's, a tiny human who would depend on them for everything. "She's beautiful." Clay's voice was thick with emotion. He reached out with one large, gentle finger to stroke their daughter's cheek. "She looks like you." She has your chin, and probably your stubbornness, if that entrance is anything to judge by. Catherine looked up at him, saw tears streaming down his face, and felt her heart expand even further. We made her. We made a person. Clay kissed Catherine's forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Thank you. Thank you for this, for her, for giving me a family again. They named her Sarah Catherine Bridger, honoring the past while claiming the future. Little Sarah proved to be as strong-willed as her parents predicted, demanding attention with lusty cries that echoed through the house. Catherine learned to nurse, to soothe, to read her daughter's needs from subtle cues. Clay learned to change diapers, to walk the floor at night when Sarah was fussy, to sing lullabies in his rough baritone that somehow always worked when nothing else would. The ranch work continued, adjusted around the needs of an infant. Catherine wore Sarah in a sling while she worked in the garden, while she helped with bookkeeping, while she moved through her days. Maria had been right. Her body knew what to do, and slowly, Catherine grew into motherhood. But there were hard moments too. Times when Sarah cried for hours and nothing helped, when Catherine felt overwhelmed and inadequate, when the sheer responsibility of keeping this tiny human alive felt crushing. One particularly difficult night, with Sarah screaming despite being fed, changed, and held, Catherine broke down. I don't know what she needs. I'm trying everything, and it's not enough. I'm not enough. Tears streamed down her face as she rocked Sarah, whose cries had reached a pitch that seemed physically impossible from such a small body. Clay took the baby gently, settling her against his broad chest, one large hand spanning her tiny back. You're exhausted. Go lie down for a while. I've got her. But, Catherine, go. His voice was firm, but kind. You can't pour from an empty cup. Rest. She stumbled to bed, falling into sleep so deep she didn't dream. When she woke hours later, the house was quiet. She found Clay in the rocking chair by the fire, Sarah sleeping peacefully against his chest, both of them breathing in rhythm. How did you, Catherine whispered, walked with her, sang to her. Eventually, she wore herself out. Clay looked up, his expression tender. She's not crying because you're a bad mother, Catherine. She's crying because she's a baby, and sometimes babies cry. It doesn't mean you're failing. It feels like failing. I know, but it's not. He stood carefully, transferring Sarah to Catherine's arms. The baby stirred, but didn't wake, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. You're doing an amazing job. Sarah is healthy, happy, loved. That's what matters. Catherine looked down at her daughter, at the perfection of her tiny features, and felt that fierce love surge again. I want to give her everything: safety, opportunity, confidence. I want her to never doubt that she's loved, that she matters, that she can be anything she wants to be. Then, that's what we'll give her. Clay wrapped his arms around both of them. Together. That's how we do everything, remember? Together. And they did. Sarah grew from a tiny infant into a sturdy toddler, curious and fearless. She took her first steps early, motivated by the desire to follow her father around the ranch. Her first words were Papa and Mama, followed quickly by Horse and Mine. By the time she was 2, Sarah was riding in front of Clay on Ranger, shrieking with delight as they cantered across the meadow. Catherine's heart would stop every time, but she forced herself not to interfere. Sarah needed to learn courage, to experience adventure, to know that her parents trusted her to be capable. And slowly, Catherine discovered that the terror of motherhood was balanced by profound joy. Sarah's first smile, her first laugh, the way she'd run to Catherine with arms outstretched, shouting, "Mama!" The way she'd curl up in Clay's lap for bedtime stories, her dark eyes growing heavy with sleep. The thousand small miracles of watching a person grow. "You were right," Catherine told Maria one afternoon, as they watched Sarah chasing butterflies in the meadow. "I was so afraid I couldn't do this, couldn't be a good mother. But I am. We are." Maria smiled. "I am always right, mija. You would do well to remember this." They laughed together, and Catherine felt a contentment she'd never imagined possible. The girl who'd run from San Francisco in terror, who'd arrived in Montana desperate and half-starved, was gone. In her place was a woman who'd claimed her power, her land, her life. A woman who'd faced her demons and won. A woman who was building a legacy of strength and love for her daughter to inherit. The past would always be part of her, the trauma, the fear, the hard-won lessons. But it no longer defined her. She'd taken those broken pieces and forged them into something new, something stronger. She'd become exactly who she was meant to be. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Catherine and Clay's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.